Part 31. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 301. Chapter 301. It's easy to get things done wherever you have acquaintances. The carriage went all the way through the streets and alleys, and arrived at Pingan Lane in the south of the city. There was a small tea house at the entrance of the lane. A young man of 13 or 14 was looking around at the door of the tea house. When he saw Grn jumping out of the carriage, he smiled and stepped forward to give him a pat. "I thought I could only see you when I got to the academy, but I didn't expect you to find you first. But why didn't you go to my house? You left in a hurry that day, but there was something wrong at home." This boy is Grn's best friend in the dormitory named Le Bolin. He is naturally optimistic and cheerful. He often eats and drinks with Grn on weekdays and gets along very well with him. But Grn couldn't say that his mother had passed away. After all, there were too many things involved and he couldn't tell clearly at the moment. He smiled and said, "School will start soon. Let's catch up on old times then. I have something to ask you for help today." Grn responded with a smile, and before Le Bolin could ask any more questions, Li Lauer and Mr. Wen also got off the carriage. Grn quickly introduced them and heard that one of them was Grn's father and the other was Grn's teacher. Le Bolin quickly bowed politely. Li Lauer smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "Sir, Grn said that your uncle is a middleman and has many good yards, so we took the liberty to come and disturb him today." "Uncle, you're welcome. My colleague and I are classmates and friends. You can just call me Bolin." Le Bolin saluted again, and finally when he mentioned his uncle, his face became more proud. "My uncle is indeed our uncle. He is the best person in the south of the city, and all the neighbors in the nearby villages are willing to ask for his help. Speaking of it, a middleman is an intermediary who buys and sells houses. His name is more pleasant than that of a person who buys and sells people, but he can't escape the ranks of the ninth rate." Le Bolin was studying in the academy and had a noble status, but he had no dislike for this uncle who was a low-class uncle. It was rare for him to be sensible and sensible. Li Lauer and Mr. Wen looked at each other and were both satisfied with Grn as their good friend. Soon, Rebelin led them to an alley behind the tea house. The alley is very clean. There are 3 houses on each side of the bluestone road. There are strips of stone at the door of each house, which are polished very smooth. It is obvious that many people sit here and chat. At the end of the alley, in the small courtyard facing the south, Le Bolin's uncle Sun Fu's family lived. Hearing that Li Lauer and others were his nephew's classmates, Sun Fu was very enthusiastic and quickly invited everyone into the house to drink tea and snacks, smiling so much that his face almost blossomed. He has eaten more salt than his nephew for decades, so his vision is naturally too poisonous. Although the clothes worn by Li Lauer and Mr. Wen are not satin, the fabrics are excellent and the workmanship is fine. They are definitely not ordinary people. He secretly made up his mind to help his nephew well today and not to lose face to his nephew. Maybe he could still make friends with noble people, which would be convenient for him in the future. I heard that Li Lauer wanted to find a small courtyard. It didn't have to be too big, but it needed more houses and friendly neighbors. It was best to be closer to the east of the city. He became more determined in this idea. Because Kyoto chose Uesugi Prefecture as its new capital. The big reason was that there was a palace in Uesugi Prefecture. During the time of the late emperor, he went to the south of the Yangtze River for inspection and stayed here for a long time. The palace was built very exquisitely, in the style of the Jiangnan water town, and it directly occupied the entire east of the city. Or strictly speaking, the Uesugi Prefecture at that time was only as big as the north of the city. Because palaces were built in the southeast and people gradually gathered together, the south and west of the city became what they are today. The Li family wants to buy a courtyard, and it also needs to be closer to the east of the city. This means that someone from the Li family will often go to the palace, or at least often go in and out of the 6 yamen. Such a golden thigh is so rare, don't worry about anything, just hug it first and then talk about it. Second Master Li and Mr. Wen, it's such a coincidence that you two came here. Our yard has been planned to be sold recently. The landlord is old and has no children, so he plans to go to his nephew. We have been old neighbors for many years. Even if we get along well, the landlord is reluctant to leave for a while. If the second master thinks our alley is good, I will help him immediately, how about it? Before Li Laoer could say anything, Lei Bolin had already pulled Jiaren's arm and shouted happily, "Haha, Jiaren, we will be neighbors from now on. The academy is on holiday, so we can come back together." Jiaren also laughed, but said, "My family bought a yard so that I could stay there during my exams. I'm afraid I won't be able to live here in the next 2 years." Lei Bolin was a little disappointed, but fortunately Jiaren said again, "But in the past 2 years, I will come here often." Rebelin became happy again and talked about the fun places nearby and which food shop had delicious food. Sun Fu sighed inwardly when he heard this. His nephew was pretty good at ordinary times, but compared to this young man from the Li family, he was still far behind. At least no one is steady and no one acts thoughtfully. Li Laoer thought for a while before picking up Mr. Wen. It only took a quarter of an hour to get here by carriage. Moreover, this alley is quiet in the middle of the hustle and bustle, easy to get in and out, and has nice neighbors. It shouldn't be easy to find a place like this again. He made up his mind and asked Sun Fu to help inquire. As a result, within a short time, Sun Fu came back with a smile and took them to see the yard. The old couple who sold the yard liked scholars the most. When they heard that it was a young gentleman from Luoan Academy who wanted to buy a yard, they immediately agreed. At this moment, the two people warmly greeted everyone and walked around the yard. There are 2 storefronts in front of the yard, which are rented to a young couple to open a grocery store. However, the store is not connected to the backyard, which ensures the privacy of both parties' lives. There are 3 main rooms in the yard, and 2 east and west wing rooms. The wing rooms can be used as warehouses and kitchens. There is a moon door on the left side of the main house leading to half of the small garden at the back. A well was dug in the corner, some flowers and plants were planted, and the back door was opened for daily access. Li Laoer took a fancy to it almost immediately. There are enough rooms, and there will be a place for family members to stay when they come over. The shop in front will be taken back later, and it will be convenient to open a small business at home. The old couple were familiar with Sun Fu, and after Li Laoer promised to take good care of the yard where they had lived for half their lives, they set a price of 550 taels. The price is much higher than before. But now this is a new capital, suddenly too many people are crowded in, and housing prices are rising, and the price is very reasonable. Li Laoer made the decision at that time, and even took advantage of the fact that there was no errand at the Yamen, so he went directly to change stalls and wrote the house deed in Jiaren's name. Before dusk covers the entire city, this small courtyard belongs to Jiaren. Lei Bolin was so envious that he asked Jiaren to treat him to delicious food, which made everyone laugh. The old couple still had to pack their things and asked the Li family to let them stay for one more day. Of course Li Laoer agreed and told them to take care of things slowly and not to rush, but Mr. Wen wanted to move in immediately so that he could go to court tomorrow. The old couple did not expect that Mr. Wen, who had always been quiet and easygoing, was actually the royal censor of the dynasty. They were so surprised that they hurriedly tidied up the wing and helped Mr. Wen settle down first. Mr. Wen didn't refuse, and he didn't even say a few polite words to Li Laoer. Previously, when they got off the carriage, Li Laoer said that he wanted to buy a yard and prepare Jiaren for the exam later. He guessed that this was an excuse. In fact, the Li family bought a yard just to accommodate him. If he refuses, won't that ruin the Li family's desire to protect him? You must know that none of his biological parents are like this, but the Li family has done it. How valuable it is to him. Thousands of words of thanks are better than keeping them in mind. The future is long, so repay the kindness slowly. From now on, the Lee family will be his second home. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 302. Chapter 302, The people are prosperous and the family is prosperous. Before closing the city gate, Lee Lauer and his son hurried back to Sujintan. The family was waiting for them to have dinner. They heard that the yard was bought and Mr. Wen had settled in. The old lady was very happy. Mr. Wen is too polite and didn't say anything when he had something to do. If he had known that his family was like this, we would have helped him a long time ago. I'm afraid Tianwei will be the only one to go to court from the inn. Everyone also nodded. In a few days, let's go and have a look. Do we need to add something to the yard? Mr. Wen only has Wenhai next to him. I'm afraid he won't be able to take good care of him. Okay, bring some of the meat sauce, pickles, radishes, cabbage, smoked rabbit, etc. from home. Do you also need 2 sets of bedding? It's better to make 2 new sets. They shouldn't be too thin. It's not quite warm today, and there are no kongs in the city, and the bed is cold. I'm afraid 2 sets of bedding are not enough. In a few days we will go to the city to see the lights, and we will have to stay 1 night. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru were very attentive, and the more they talked, the more they felt that there were a lot of things to prepare. The 2 sisters were very busy and packed up a lot of things before going to bed. Those who needed to buy were also made a list. In a blink of an eye, the day of the Lantern Festival has arrived. According to the old rules, the New Year is not fully celebrated until the Lantern Festival. Every household has to be busy with their livelihood in the New Year and no longer has the time to play. So, on the Lantern Festival, men, women, old and young seem to want to seize the last bit of madness and have fun. Just after noon, the streets of Zindu were busy with people coming and going. The Li family members entrusted their yard to the villagers and took a carriage into the city. The old couple have moved out of the original house. Because the nephew does not live too close to the house, it is inconvenient to move, so many of the household items and wooden utensils cannot be taken away. Mr. Wen decided to give them 10 taels of silver and kept them all. So, this yard has become a move-in all option. Li Lauer made 2 trips before and delivered bedding, rice, grains, vegetables, etc. Now there is really no shortage of anything. Mr. Wen still lives in the wing room. Even after the old couple moved out, they did not move to the main room. And because the Li family was coming, he took Wenhai with him and specially cleaned the main house and the west wing. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru accompanied the old lady to look around the front and backyards, and then got busy making dinner. The old lady took her grandchildren, opened the back door, and played at the door. Sun Fu's family wanted to make good friends with the Li family, so Sun Fu's daughter-in-law immediately opened the door and came out to chat and laugh. When the neighbors heard the commotion, they all came out one after another to recognize the person. I heard that the Li family belongs to Sujintan. Some people asked if the hot springs were really hot enough to boil eggs. Others asked if Sujintan would grow jade melons and golden fruits this year. The old lady responded with a smile, and also asked about where to buy groceries nearby and which grocery store had a good reputation. As everyone listened, they felt that the Li family was more and more harmonious, and they soon started chatting and laughing together. When the Marquis brought Yeshan to find this place, the old lady was talking to her neighbors about the war and chaos when the capital was moved, which made everyone sigh. Brother Mao was playing with some naughty boys nearby. Brother Li was accompanying Jiaran to entertain Lei Bolan, who came after hearing the news, and Jiawan Jiaxi had already disappeared, and he didn't know where he was nearby. Adventure. Jiyan leaned on her grandma's arms, listening to the old people chatting with a smile, and occasionally yawned. When she found out that the Marquis had arrived, She happily ran over to greet him, "Father." The Marquis squatted down, hugged her, and asked with a smile, "Are you impatient? Let's set off after dinner." "Okay," Jiyan happily hugged her adoptive father's neck. Even Brother Cat ran over and grabbed the Marquis by the collar. So, the Marquis held one in his arms and held the other in his hand, walked to the door and greeted the old lady, "Auntie, am I not late?" "No, Hong Ying and the others are cooking." "Let's leave after eating." The old lady introduced to many new neighbors, "This is my nephew. He is busy on weekdays and doesn't come here often. If something happens in the future, you can help me take care of him in a few minutes. When the fruits in my orchard are harvested, I will give you some more as a thank you gift." The neighbors all laughed and said, "Okay, for the sake of the fruit, we have to help." At this time, Jia Huan ran out to say, "Grandma, it's time to serve dinner." The old lady got up, said goodbye to her neighbors, and took a group of children and grandchildren home for dinner. The neighbors looked at it with envy and couldn't help but sigh with envy. It is good when the population is prosperous and the life is lively. Lei Bolin had long heard that Jiaran said that the food at home was delicious. Now that Jiaran invited him, he shamelessly came in. Sun Fu's daughter-in-law saw her and wanted to greet her nephew, but Sun Fu snatched her away. The family bought a new yard and went to the city to play again. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru were happy. They made 6 dishes and 1 soup and steamed snow-white rice. The family, old and young, plus Mr. Ho and Yeshan, Dr. Zhang who came to play with them, and Lei Bolin, a total of more than 10 people, filled 2 tables. Brothers Li Lao and several others sat with the Marquis, Mr. Wen, and Dr. Zhang, and they also added an extra jug of wine. Ribolin's mouth was full of oil as he ate, and he kept praising him, making everyone laugh. After dinner and a quick digestion, it was getting dark outside. Lei Bolin said goodbye and went home to look for his parents and watch the lanterns together. Everyone in the Li family also planned to set off, but there were too many children at home, so the old lady temporarily divided them among them. Li Lao and Jiaran took brother Li, Li Lao San and his family of 4 took Mao Gear, and Li Lao Si and his wife took Jian and accompanied the old lady. And the good news must be accompanied by the Marquis, and Yeshan will accompany him to serve him. As for divine Dr. Zhang, he had already left early, so everyone did not need to worry about the old man's safety. Think about the rabbits, goats, and even piglets that have been killed in the village in the past few months. It would be great if this old man did not harm others. Master Ho booked a private room in advance at the largest restaurant in the shopping street, right in the middle of the lantern market. The old and young people rushed over and opened the windows to have a panoramic view of the lanterns all over the street. The children were very lively. After eating snacks, they went out to play. Soon, the Marquis was the only one left in the house with the old lady and Jiyan, and Yeshan guarded the door. It was the first time for the old lady to see such a bustling street scene, and she couldn't help but sigh, "When I was in Sci-fi, I really didn't know there was such a beautiful place in the world. I just thought that the mountains covered with snow in the winter sunset were beautiful enough. Come on. It's better to go out and broaden your horizons, then you'll know how great a place Tianwu is." Jiyan grabbed the windowsill and tried her best to lean out and look out. The Marquis was afraid that she would fall, so he hugged her waist and replied with a smile, "When we get settled in the future, I will take my aunt and Fu Niu to travel for a year and a half, look at our beautiful mountains and rivers in Tianwu." The old lady quickly waved her hand, "Let's take Fu Niu. I don't want to struggle with my old bones anymore. I struggled from outside the Great Wall to Junyang, and then from Junyang to here, and half of my life is gone. Now, I just hope that everyone is doing well and living a peaceful life." The Marquis stopped trying to persuade him and said, "Let's go, my adoptive father will take you down to guess lantern riddles and win a few lanterns." "Okay, okay," Jiyan was happy and went to call Grandma again. At this time, there was a knock on the door. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 303. Chapter 303. Mrs. Lee is furious. Yashin thought it was the children who were back, so he quickly opened the door, but there were 5 or 6 people standing outside the door, including one middle-aged man, and the rest were old people. A few of them were wearing brocade robes and hairpins on their heads. They looked like they were no ordinary people. Yashan recognized 2 of them and regretted opening the door, but at this moment he could only ask loudly, "Excuse me, why did you knock on the door?" The middle-aged man frowned and responded, "Is this the Marquis of Zinting sitting in the room? Please report quickly, we have something to say." Before Yashan could speak again, the Marquis, who was only separated by a screen, had already heard it and ordered, "Yashan, let them come in." Yashan took 2 steps away, and those people came over one after another, walked around the screen, and saw the Marquis holding a fat girl in his arms and feeding her snacks. The Marquis not only stretched out his hand to catch the crumbs, but also wiped the fat girl's mouth with a handkerchief and gave her water. His fatherly look made everyone stunned. Jiyan had eaten and drank enough, hugged his adoptive father's neck, rested on his shoulder, and watched the play honestly. The old lady was a little nervous and wanted to hug the good news, but saw the Marquis shaking his head. He pulled off his cloak and wrapped the good news around him, then looked at the crowd and asked without any politeness, "What do you want from me?" He had no intention of inviting anyone to sit down and drink tea. The faces of those who came were not good looking. The middle-aged man immediately asked, "Master Ye, is this how you treat guests?" The Marquis raised his eyebrows, "I am an uninvited guest. The reason why I am not turned away is because I am an official in the same dynasty." The middle-aged man's face darkened, and when he wanted to say more, the Marquis asked directly, "Marquis Dingbei, aren't you supposed to be running around on the riverside defense line, working day and night to guard Jiangnan and Zindu? Why are you here now?" The middle-aged man who just spoke was the Marquis of Dingbei. Hearing these words, he felt a little more embarrassed and guilty, and replied dryly, "Today is the Lantern Festival, can't I come back to rest for a day?" One of the old men had to speak now, "Master Marquis must also have heard that the war on the riverside is tense, right?" The Marquis shook his head and replied calmly, "I haven't heard of it. If the war on the riverside is really serious, how can Marquis Dingbei have the heart to come back to celebrate the festival? Shouldn't he be on guard and be prepared for barbarians crossing the river at all times?" The old men were gagged, and the color of Dingbei's face was even more indescribable. One of the old men couldn't bear it any longer, so he stepped forward to salute and whispered advice, "Master Marquis, at this time when our family and country are in danger, we really shouldn't act out of emotion." The Marquis nodded, as if he thought what he said made sense, "Yes, you really shouldn't act out of emotion." The eyes of the several old men were full of surprises. When they wanted to continue their efforts, the Marquis spoke first. "I also know that I often act on my own initiative, so I plan to listen to the words of the elders in the future. The elders have said before that the Jiangbei defense line is impregnable. It really shouldn't be heavily guarded and waste national power, let alone lead troops to defend the enemy behind the defense line. In addition, real numbers are redundant. Even if I am injured, I am self-inflicted. If I am not punished and demoted, it is already a mercy of the court. Therefore, I will submit a memorial tomorrow, disarm and return to the field, and never give instructions on the Jiangbei defense line again." The old men were so embarrassed that they almost cried after being slapped in the face. At first they thought that if they had strong natural defenses and gave up half of the country to the barbarians, Jiangnan would be safe. However, Xintinghao reinforced the Jiangbei defense line time and time again, constantly asking for more troops and replacement of ordnance, and the army food and salary could not be postponed for a day. Even, he led troops to search for surviving people in the north of the Yangtze River all year round, and had many battles with the barbarians. Whenever there were casualties, he would also give a sum of money as a pension. They didn't think about it for a while, so they took turns submitting memorials to complain to the emperor. As a result, before the emperor could express his stance, Marquis Zinting was injured and retreated. They were completely satisfied, and their military pay, armaments, and rations began to decrease. As a result, the barbarians seemed to know the inside story and began to attack the defense line like crazy a year ago. The other side of the dock can no longer hold on, but Dingbiu, an idiot who usually talks a lot of nonsense, is so frightened that he doesn't even dare to go into battle when he actually confronts the barbarians. Otherwise, they would not have the guts to admit their mistake and plead for mercy. Jiyan saw the impatience in his adoptive father's expression and started to make a fuss. "Look at the lanterns," Fu Niu wants to look at the lanterns. Sure enough, the Marquis immediately stood up and coaxed in a gentle voice, "Okay, Niu, be good, I'll take you there now." While talking, he went to help the old lady again. The Marquis of Dingbei had been holding back his anger for a long time. Now when he saw Jiyan and the old lady wearing ordinary clothes, he directly blamed him. "Whose child is this? There are no rules like this. Let's talk about family and country. There is no room for you to interfere in such a big matter." "Jiyan, what does a 2 or 3-year-old child know about family and country affairs and rules?" This is obviously an insinuation that the Marquis does not distinguish between public and private matters and does not worry about family and country affairs. But before the Marquis could speak, the old lady got mad. "Who are you? Who gave you the right to scold my children? Does my children have any rules? What does it have to do with you? Spring has not arrived yet, and the grass is not green yet. Where did you come from?" Bold, Marquis Dingbei didn't expect that an ordinary old lady could point at him and scold him. He was furious. "I am Marquis Dingbei, a high-ranking official of the court. You actually dare to insult me?" The old lady stiffened her neck, showed no fear, and yelled back, "You are the Marquis of Dingbei, what's wrong? Our family is not your slaves in the Marquis of Dingbei's mansion, and we don't live by eating your rice, so why should we listen to you scolding us? What a child! Besides, as the Marquis of Dingbei, why don't you act cruelly to the barbarians? How can you do this to a 2-year-old child? If you dare to bully my granddaughter, I will carry the coffin to complain tomorrow. I would rather die in front of the palace than to make you Dingbiu and become famous to the whole Tianwu. Then let the whole Tianwu see it. Ding the northern Marquis pretends to be a grandson to the barbarians, but to the people of Tianwu he is an uncle. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong is a model for the world." The old lady went all out and shouted a series of words, which made Marquis Dingbei's face turn purple, and several old men were also dumbfounded. No one expected this old lady to be so powerful in battle. The Marquis of Dingbei was scolded and wanted to take action, but he glanced at the Marquis of Zinting and did not dare. He could only say forcefully, "I don't want to see a shrew like you." After saying that, he turned around and left with a flick of his sleeves, as if he had saved the face he had lost. The old men had no choice but to look at each other, then quickly handed over their hands and left dejectedly. The door of the house was closed, and the calmness as before was finally restored. Jiyan's big eyes were shining. She clapped her little hands and applauded her grandma vigorously. "Grandma is awesome, Grandma is so amazing." Mr. Ho also smiled and said, "My aunt scolded me so well." However, the old lady's legs softened and she sat down on the stool. With trembling hands, she tugged at the collar of Mr. Ho's clothes and said fearfully, "Master Ho, my aunt didn't cause you any trouble, did she? Will the family be implicated?" "That's not the case. Mr. Ho, I was so angry just now that I couldn't hold it back." The Marquis was so funny that he quickly comforted the old lady. "Auntie, have you forgotten that I am also a Marquis, and the Emperor is my cousin? Then the Marquis of Dingbei is just a showman, and can't compete with the powerful, so don't worry." The old lady breathed a sigh of relief, but she no longer had the energy to go down to play, so she said, "You can take Fu Niu down to play. I'll just sit here and watch the scenery." "No, Fu Niu will accompany Grandma." Ji Yin hugged the old lady and acted coquettishly, her heart filled with joy. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 304. Chapter 304. Dingbei made a big mistake. The old lady just killed everyone for her, she was so handsome. This is her grandma. She is usually very kind-hearted, but when she is bullied, she can instantly transform into a tiger and a leopard, as fierce as a tiger. "Grandma, Fu Niu loves you so much." The old lady was holding her chubby granddaughter in her arms and listening to her coquettish milking sounds. She suddenly felt less panicked. "Grandma loves you too, silly girl. From now on, you have to remember that you are the treasure of our family. If no one in the family says a word to you, no one else has any qualifications. Do you understand?" "Understood." Ji Yin gave the old lady a big kiss, her little face buried in her grandma's shoulder, her eyes red. Thank God and fate for allowing her to become the daughter of the Li family and receive such preference. Li Laozi and Tao Hongying brought the cat brother Li Gear upstairs. They didn't find anything unusual when they entered the room, so they smiled and said, "Mom, Jiaxi Jian and the others are playing crazy, we can only treat Li Gear." The cat brother brought it back first, and Jiaran also met a familiar classmate, chatting down there. The old lady nodded and quickly chased Mr. Ho away. "Master Ho, please take Fu Niu down to play for a while. The lantern market will be gone soon. Lao Si and the others are here, so don't worry." The Marquis then nodded and hugged Ji Yin. Ji Yin waved to her grandma, parents, and brothers, and went to play happily. Tao Hongying was attentive and noticed that her daughter had red circles under her eyes, so she asked her mother-in-law, "Mom, what happened just now?" The old lady said directly, "The Marquis of Dingbei brought a few people here, as if he wanted to persuade the Marquis to lead troops to fight. But the Marquis did not agree, and they were unhappy. The Marquis of Dingbei used the topic to scold him. Our Fu Niu was unruly and uncultured, so I couldn't hold it back and pointed at his nose and cursed a few times, which made them angry." "Who? Marquis Dingbei? The one who abandoned Mrs. Kui, fled to Jiangnan alone, stopped his wife and remarried." Tao Hongying gritted her teeth with hatred. "Who can give such a beast the face to say that our children have no rules? Then what is he? He is not afraid of thunder." Li Laozi glanced out the window and said, "Mom, I'm going to find Mr. Ho and Fu Niu." "Okay, let's go protect them more and come back soon." The old lady didn't think much about it, but Tao Hongying knew her husband too well. She glanced at him but didn't say anything. Li Laozi got up and went out. It was dark at night, but because of the lanterns everywhere, the entire shopping street was illuminated as if it were daytime. The shy young women wore gauze hats and were protected by their fathers and brothers. They rarely went out for a walk, enjoying the happiest moment of the year. Young men gathered in groups, regardless of the still cold wind, waving fans, talking and laughing loudly, and passed away in a swagger. The children were squirming through the crowd, and were grabbed by their parents who pushed them forward and slapped them on the head and face several times. They didn't care about crying, they were still thinking about continuing their mischief, and they were not afraid of being abducted by kidnappers, or getting lost and not finding their families. It has been a long time since good news came to this world, and this is the first time I have seen such a grand occasion. She was lying in her adoptive father's arms, holding a candied hose in one hand and a lantern in the other, her face flushed with excitement. How he hugged her and walked through the shopping street from beginning to end, buying a bunch of things. There was no room left on Yeshan's body, so the father and daughter gave up. At this time, there suddenly seemed to be a commotion in the distance, and someone was shouting in panic, which was particularly harsh in the night. But fortunately, the noise soon died down. Li Laozi came out of nowhere, picked up his daughter with a smile, and said to the Marquis, "Master Marquis, my mother is worried about you, so she asked me to pick her up." "Then go back, it's getting cold late at night." Mr. Ho tucked Ji Yin's cloak and went to the restaurant to meet him. There were people on the road laughing and talking. "Haha, did you see it just now? Haha, it's so white. Indeed, it's too white, haha, whiter than a woman. The dignified Marquis, he calls like a girl. He also said that he has been fighting in the field all year round and shed blood and sacrificed his life for the country. How dare you, who would believe it?" Hearing that something was wrong, Yeshan turned around and got into the crowd. Mr. Ho and Li Laozi protected their children and just returned to the restaurant. Before they could go upstairs, Yeshan caught up with them. The Marquis glanced at him, and he stepped forward and whispered, "It is said that the Marquis of Dingbei accidentally knocked over the lantern and set his clothes on fire. He couldn't put it out for a while, so he had to take off his clothes, he was so ugly." The Marquis raised his eyebrows and said nothing more. The strange thing is that Li Laozi was not curious and asked more questions, and teased his daughter all the way upstairs. In the private room, everyone in the Li family has returned. The children have received lanterns and have eaten snacks. They are now a little drowsy. Everyone drank a cup of hot tea, took a short rest, and then went downstairs to go home. Master Ho sent the Li family to the small courtyard first, and then returned to the Ho mansion. Everyone had a good time, but was very tired. They had a good night's sleep. The second day was the first day of school at Luoan Academy. The children still had a lot of fun, so they pestered the old lady to go and visit the small town of Luoan. The old lady was reluctant to leave her son and grandson, so she decided to take another trip to the small town of Luoan as a family. Therefore, others went to school, escorted by at most 1 or 2 relatives, friends, and servants. Jiaran and brother Li were better, and there were a dozen or so people behind them. This is because Go Sheng has caught the wind and cold. He will have to go to the academy a few days later, otherwise he will have to add the 3 members of the Wu family, and the situation will be even greater. The small town of Luoan, which had been quiet for more than half a month, finally became lively again because of the return of the students. Some students want to give their parents a taste of their favorite food, and people often come to the Li family food shop to ask. Li Laosan's family couldn't bear to let the students down, so they put down their luggage and started preparing ingredients before they had time to pack up, planning to open the business. No one could do anything to help him, so he walked around the town and then hurried home. The village chief and Uncle Zhao were wandering around the river beach with nothing to do. When they saw the Li family coming back, they stepped forward to talk. "How is the city? Is it lively? Are there many people watching the lanterns?" "It's lively and the lanterns are beautiful, but there are too many people. They are crowded one by one and I don't know how many cloth shoes I have lost." The old lady joked and added, "Our family bought a small yard in the city to prepare the home. Let's stay there during the exam time. Once everything is sorted out, everyone will go see the lanterns during the Lantern Festival next year, so we won't have to worry about having a place to stay. Okay, maybe we will make more money this year and everyone in the village will go to the city to buy yards." "Not necessarily, I won't go, it's not as good as the cornucopia of Broken Gold Beach." Everyone chatted and laughed and dispersed. Li Laoer and Tao Hongying were anxious to go to the valley to have a look, but Li Laozi went up the mountain. In fact, there is not much work in the orchard now, and it is very deserted. He found a big stone and sat there until it got dark, blowing the cold wind, and then returned home. At this moment, dinner at home has been prepared. A large pot of millet porridge, with a handful of red dates, cooked until it is thick, soft, golden, and fragrant. Pork belly was stewed with dried vegetables and tofu, and a clay pot was filled with it. There was also a plate of fried fungus with cabbage and a plate of scrambled eggs with salted Chinese tune. With a large dustpan of steamed noodles and 2 bowls of egg custard, the meal is complete. Of course the egg custard belongs to Jian and Mao Gear. The others drank porridge and steamed buns, talked and laughed, and were quite satisfied. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 305. Chapter 305, The Trapped Beast. The family is not short of money now. After all, the yard in the city cost more than 500 taels, so I bought it as soon as I asked. But they are used to living a simple life. Unless there are major festivals or guests come to the house, the Li family is still not used to being too wasteful. This way, both meat and vegetables can be eaten by people of all ages, which is also very good. After the dining table was cleared, Tao Hongying came to look for the old lady with 2 pieces of cloth in her arms. "Mom, I saw that the sword and martial arts attire of Jiaran's academy was very good, the sleeves were narrow, and he could move his hands and feet easily. I found 2 pieces of strong and wear-resistant material, and tried to sew one for Mr. Ho." "Try." "Okay, I'll sew with you." The old lady agreed immediately and helped to pull apart the fabric. "Master Ho is so kind to our Fu Niu on weekdays. We really have nothing to repay. We can only give Zhang Luo more food. Remember to wait for the weather to get better and make some dry noodles and preserved meat. Those people today don't look like good people. I'm afraid the Marquis will have to go to war." "I think so too." As soon as Tao Hongying responded, Li Laosi came in and sat on the edge of the Kong without speaking for a long time. Jian originally hugged a cloth tiger, but when she saw that her father looked wrong, she crawled over. Li Laosi rarely hugged his daughter, rubbed her soft little hair, then stood up and knelt on the ground. "Mom, I have something to say." The old lady was threading a needle, and when the tip of the needle pricked her finger, beads of blood came out. She slowly turned her head to look at her younger son. As if she thought of something, her heart sank. Li Laosi lowered his head, not daring to look at his mother's face, and spoke in one breath. "Mother, the thing that Dingbei Marquis was burned today was his son's doing. My son hated him for scolding Fu Niu and making my mother angry. But my son is a commoner and he is the Marquis. My son can't beat him blatantly. He can only use some petty tricks. Means. Just like when the man named Jiao almost killed all of us at the dock, my son had no choice but to strip him naked and make him look ugly. He didn't dare to kill him for fear of harming the family." He knocked his head to the ground and took a deep breath. "Mom, my son wants to be a soldier. He wants to follow the Marquis to kill barbarians and make great achievements. My son must be powerful, and no one should dare to bully our family again. No, how dare you scold my daughter again?" Tao Hongying was so shocked that she opened her mouth wide and wanted to speak, but no sound came out. The old lady was also staring at the top of her son's head, tears falling down her cheeks. "Your eldest brother and Ji just left, can't we even keep you in our family?" "Mom, mother. Don't cry, I just say it casually." Li Laosi looked up and saw that my mother was crying. He was really frightened. He threw himself to the edge of the Kong, hugged my mother's thigh, and retorted in panic. Unfortunately, the old lady was annoyed and pointed at the door. "Get out." "Mother." Li Laosi felt a little regretful, but more of aggrieved. He wanted to say something more, but was pushed out by Tao Hongying. Jian was also a little overwhelmed. She crawled to her grandma and pulled her sleeves to wipe her tears. The old lady hugged her granddaughter and sobbed, I knew it, your father couldn't bear it anymore. He has been reckless since he was a child, and he has so much strength. If your uncle hadn't been lost, you dad has already gone out to explore. Now that your uncle has been found and the family life is getting better, he has started to think again. Why doesn't he want the family to be bullied? Why doesn't he want you to be scolded again? He just wants to kill the barbarians and show off his power. Tao Hongying also wiped away her tears. At that time, he was following Lu, and I was scared. I always felt that he was going to fly away, leaving our mothers behind and never come back. Every time he went out, his eyes were shining, as if we were the house is like a cage. The good news was caught between grandma and my mother, and I couldn't even wipe my tears in time. Actually, she couldn't bear to leave her father. After all, swords have no eyes. People in the world only see success and fame. Who sees piles of corpses on the battlefield? But she also understood that her father was born with supernatural powers and was a top-notch marksman. He was a good man who should have made great achievements and become famous all over the world. However, for the sake of the elderly and children in the family, he had been trapped in the fields and was not allowed to use it. It was really frustrating. Li Lao heard something strange in the main room and came over to check. He saw his younger brother kneeling at the door, and he was also a little confused. He asked a few words in a low voice, then sat on the threshold and sighed, "You have been restless since you were a child, and I have wronged you for the sake of the family for so many years. It's true that you want to make contributions, but mother and Hongying can't bear to leave you, that's even more true." Second brother. Li Laozi burst into tears, "I just feel aggrieved. I can only be happy if I kill barbarians. I want to be a general and follow the Marquis to conquer half of the country. Then no one will dare to bully our family. Now, no matter how much money our family has, we don't have to worry about people getting jealous. Anyone who dares to get jealous will be chopped off by me. Unlike now, I can only act like a thief and a gangster to take revenge on anyone who bullies our family. I just hold my breath, and I have no place to use all my strength." Li Lao remembered that he also wanted to study and take the top prize, but his eldest brother suddenly disappeared, his mother was widowed, and his younger brother was younger. He had no choice but to put down his books and go to the city to find an errand. He was scolded and driven away by others. In the end, he endured countless hardships before he could get through. The location of the counting room. He was not resigned to it, suffered from pain and resentment, but he could only swallow it with tears. Now that he is older, his dream of studying can only be comforted by educating children. But my younger brother is still young, has many abilities, and has the convenience of the Marquis. He sighed, got up and entered the house, and began to persuade, "Mom, the fourth child, is really pitiful. If you are worried that he will leave and there will be no one to take care of the family, don't worry, I can carry him all." Mrs. Li wiped away her tears, glared at her son, and said angrily, "Your eldest brother has left, you have taken over the school, and you have to take care of the valley in the afternoon. The fourth brother has also left, what are you going to do tonight, going to work in the orchard?" Li Lao lowered his head and said nothing, but Mrs. Li began to feel sorry for her son again. Okay, I'll think about it carefully. You all go to bed." Hearing this, Li Lao knew that my mother was a little shaken, so he quickly put it away, got up, and left. Tao Hongying also hurriedly packed her sewing basket and went back to talk with her husband. Mrs. Li was not in the mood to wash up, so she spread the bedding, hugged her granddaughter and got directly into bed. Fortunately, Brother Cat went to bed with Njixi tonight, otherwise he would have been frightened again. This child is still timid because his parents are not around, no matter how much his family loves him. The old lady was thinking randomly and fell asleep just like that. Jiyan was worried about her grandma and lay aside obediently. Listening to her grandma's breathing becoming evener, she quickly entered the small spatial courtyard. for no other reason than to quickly search for useful things. How can any parent in the world win against his children? Even though grandma is so fiercely opposed now, as expected, she will still compromise in the end. Then daddy will definitely go out with the marquis, so it's better to prepare some good things for daddy to defend himself as soon as possible. But she has swept away the things in this small courtyard so many times. It is really not easy to find something useful. The third update is here today. I see all the kids are asking about the male protagonist. Hwawa is here to explain. Jiyan is only over 2 years old, not yet 3 years old. Don't rush to give Jiyan a CP. Let Jiyan enjoy it her carefree childhood. Don't think about CP first then. Hwawa is working very hard to update, at least 6,000 words of updates every day. Little ones, don't be too little, don't be too slow. Finally, Daily Ball, please vote for the game, update the game, give it a good review, 5 stars or good. Hwawa needs everyone's support. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 306. Chapter 306, A Reunion. It turns out that the sword was held by Lu Biatu on the way to escape, and he did his best to protect everyone. Later, he settled in Sujintan. The house was of no use, so he gave it to the Marquis to kill the enemy. If Dad goes on an expedition this time, he won't be able to ask for it back. The best way is to make another good knife for Dad. If there are enough materials, more daggers and arrows should be made. But when she was living in seclusion in the small courtyard of her hometown, she had no plans to be a blacksmith, so naturally she didn't have that many materials saved. Now I can only scrape the floor to find suitable things, such as kitchen knives, sickles, axes for chopping wood, big and small wrenches for tightening screws, etc. As long as they are made of metal and are relatively strong according to visual inspection, every one of them will be picked up by Good News Found It. I only hope that they can match the technology of the previous life, and after being melted and tempered here again, they can become Daddy's self-defense weapon. After all, Mrs. Lee had something on her mind. She got up early the next day and saw her granddaughter sleeping spread out in the morning light, so she planned to tuck her in the quilt. As a result, her granddaughter's little hands were as dirty as if she had touched the bottom of a pot. Causing her to sigh, where did this girl go to be naughty in her dream? Mrs. Lee went down to the ground to find a wet cloth, wiped her granddaughter clean, took her chubby little hand and kissed her, then sighed softly. She felt sorry for her son and wanted to keep him under her wings for the rest of her life, but her son also felt sorry for his daughter and could not bear to see her being wronged. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Yeshan drove the carriage back to the village to pick up things. Just as he was about to enter the yard, he saw Dongmei coming out with good news in her arms. He quickly saluted the young master, and finally smiled at Dongmei and said, "Did you know that I was coming back and came out to greet me? The Marquis asked me to get some letters, and I will go back to the city soon." "Great, I just have something to ask you." Dongmei put down Jiyan, who waved to them and walked home. Dongmei saw the young master entering the yard next door, and then she took Yeshan to the door of the east wing. "Take some things here with you, tell the Marquis, and find a trustworthy person to get some useful weapons." Yeshan nodded, and Dongmei added, "This is for Mr. Lee next door. Mr. Lee wants to go on an expedition with the Marquis, but the old lady doesn't agree." Yeshan was happy to hear this and responded in a low voice, "This is a good thing. The fourth master is very capable and is definitely a fierce general. With him going out with the Marquis will have a good helper." After saying that, he carried the box to the car, quickly picked up the letter and left. Jiyan was thinking about grandma, so she walked into the courtyard gate and ran to the main house. The old lady only had a little breakfast. The whole family knew that the old lady was angry, so they could only serve her carefully. Tao Hongying happened to come out of the kitchen and walked across from her daughter. She said, "Fu Niu, my mother has cooked porridge. You will eat a few more bites with grandma later and coax her more. Do you understand?" "I got it, mother." Jiyan nodded and was about to speak when a carriage suddenly ran up the road at the entrance of the village, bringing dust all over the sky to the door. Jiyan thought it was Yeshan who had left and returned, but a young man fell from the carriage with a bang. His back was bloody, which was shocking. Tao Hongying was so frightened that she threw away her porridge bowl and directly blocked her daughter behind her. The young man raised his head and suddenly shouted, "Fourth sister-in-law, it's me. Help!" Tao Hongying took a closer look and saw that it was Mr. Yan, so she ran out quickly. After the valley was built, Mr. Yan never appeared again. The wages were all entrusted to Mr. Zhou. Everyone thought that he was detained by his family to study, or that he went to other states to study. How could I have imagined that it would be like this when we meet again? Mother! Come quickly, something happened to Mr. Yan. Tao Hongying didn't care so much. She called people and helped Mr. Yan up at the same time. Unexpectedly, Mr. Yan managed to get up and pointed to the car. "Sister-in-law, in the car is my wife, who was given an abortion pill. Please help me. Miracle doctor, find Dr. Zhang." "What?" Tao Hongying glanced at the car subconsciously and almost weakened her legs. In the carriage, a young woman lay. Her ivory skirt was stained with blood, her face was pale, and she was obviously unconscious. She quickly jumped into the car and hugged him out. Jiyan ran away and planned to go to the back row room to find Dr. Zhang, but his short legs were really weak. "Fortunately, I didn't run far when I met Uncle Zhao, who was patrolling the streets. They quickly helped to find someone, and then rushed to Li's house with the good news in hand." In the main room of the Li family, the young woman was carried on the Kong. Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying helped take off her skirt, fetch water, put in cloths, and wipe away the blood. They were very busy. The woman may have felt it, so she held her stomach and cried. Old Mrs. Li looked distressed and whispered, "Girl, don't be afraid, the miracle doctor will be here soon and he will definitely cure you. Yes, this is our Li family, not outside. Don't be afraid. Mr. Yan has lived here for a long time. We have a miracle doctor here who will definitely cure you." Tao Hongying is also a mother, so she understands the woman's mood very well. When she was on the way to escape from the desert, she was pregnant with Fu Niu, and she was always worried about what would happen to her child. Fortunately, Fu Niu has always been strong, was born safely, and has been raised successfully until now. The woman didn't know whether she believed these words, but she grabbed Tao Hongying's hand, as if seeking some strength. Tao Hongying hugged her back hard and whispered some of her daughter's little habits and problems. They were all interesting and cute. The woman seemed to be fascinated by what she heard. She no longer cried out in pain, and the bleeding from her lower part also stopped. At this time, Dr. Zhang finally arrived. After looking around, he quickly took a bottle of medicine from the medicine box and poured a pill. "Melt these pills with water and give her a drink. Keep it like this for now, and I'll make the medicine. Fortunately, there are several young wives in the village who are pregnant, otherwise I wouldn't have been ready at the moment." As he spoke, he hurried out. Mr. Yan held onto the chair and held on as hard as he could. When Dr. Zhang came out, he hurriedly asked, "Uncle Zhang, how is my wife?" He only asked about his wife, not the children, which made Dr. Zhang look better. "Don't worry, he won't die. For the time being, the child can be saved." After saying that, he took out another bottle of medicinal powder and threw it to Li Laozi and Li Laoer, who had just come back. "Give him some medicine and stop looking like he's half dead. If word spreads, people will think I can't even cure an external injury. This old man has always been a sharp-tongued man, and he is not easy to say good things, and everyone is used to it. Mr. Yan was carried to the West Room, his dirty clothes and pants were stripped off, his wounds were cleaned, and he was bandaged with medicine. Li Lao Li Lao Si and others all frowned. I don't know who beat Mr. Yan. It was really a heavy blow. There was no good place on the entire buttocks and thighs. Some places were bruised and swollen, and some were beaten to pieces. The flesh and blood were stained on his pants. When he took them off, Mr. Yan was so painful that beads of sweat fell from his forehead. But he didn't scream, obviously because he didn't want his wife in the next room to worry. Everyone admired him more and more, and their hands became lighter and gentler. After finally finishing the work, both the injured and the doctors were sweating from exhaustion. The Dr. Zhang was also very quick, and he quickly prepared both medicines. Mr. Yan didn't even ask. He picked it up and drank it. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 307. Chapter 307 The Cruel Truth. In the East Room, the injured woman also drank medicine and lay on the soft bedding, drowsy. Dr. Zhang checked her pulse and finally relaxed her brows. He then asked the old lady to look under the quilt. Sure enough, the woman was no longer bleeding. The old man breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, the child has been saved, but he will have to stay in bed for a month to recuperate, and the medicine must not be stopped. The food and drink should not cause cold and fishy smell. I will check the pulse every day and adjust the medicine prescription at any time. The old lady and Tao Hongying both smiled. Great, it was really scary just now, but I finally managed to survive. Yes, this is also a blessed child. I don't want my mother to be sad. The woman didn't know if she heard it, but she finally fell asleep with peace of mind and let go of Tao Hongying's hand. Tao Hongying hurriedly went to the kitchen to cook. This couple is so seriously injured, so they need to eat well and replenish their bodies. Mr. Yan walked out with support. He wanted to kneel down and kowtow to Dr. Zhang, but Dr. Zhang helped him up. Wait until you are well before you kowtow. Be careful that the wound bleeds again, which will waste my medicine. Everyone laughed, and Li Lao sent the old man off. Mr. Yan shamelessly moved to the East Room and lay down next to the woman. It was obvious that he could rest assured by guarding his wife and children like this. The Li family didn't stop her either. Mrs. Li saw her granddaughter poking her head at the door, taking a look at the house to clean up, and then she waved to her granddaughter and held her in her arms. Mr. Yan shook Ji Yin's chubby hand and asked, "Is this Fu Niu? She has grown up so much. When I was in the valley, she still couldn't walk. She sat in the shack and played every day." "Yes, more than a year has passed in a flash." "Mr. Yan, where have you been for more than a year?" the old lady sighed. "Isn't your family's life very good? Why are you still like this?" Mr. Yan's eyes flashed with fierceness and hatred, and he cursed in a low voice, "That's not my home, it's a cave." Since he came to the Li family, he had no intention of hiding anything, so he told the story from beginning to end. Everyone was sighing after hearing this. They really didn't know how to say that the Yan family was well. It turns out that after the construction of the valley was completed, Mr. Yan returned home and wanted to invite his family to visit Sujintan. No matter how the construction here is, it is always his hard work, which is enough to prove his talent. It's a pity that the Yan family didn't pay attention at all. They just urged him to take the exam and make sure that he became an official. They even arranged a marriage for him to marry an arrogant woman who was well known among relatives and friends, just because this woman's family could provide some help to the Yan family. Mr. Yan was so disgusted that he even went on a hunger strike and hit the wall. In the end, his mother relented and sent him to the next state capital. There is a mine where prisoners were exiled, and some houses and work areas need to be built. The person in charge is Mr. Zhou, Mr. Yan's brother-in-law. Mr. Yan felt very at home there, and when he was busy he forgot about the troubles at home. But also during this period, he met the woman he loved, called Huanayang, the daughter of a prison officer who was assigned to the mines. In fact, Huanayang's family was not distributed along with her father, but her family property was confiscated and she became a commoner. It's just that Huanayang was filial and couldn't bear her sick father to suffer alone in the mine. She followed him and rented a house under the mine. She took on some daily chores, such as washing clothes and mending. After earning money, she took care of her father's food and clothing. The people nearby were very touched and took good care of her and never bullied her. Mr. Yan also settled in this farmhouse, so you can't avoid running into him when you go in or out. Mr. Yan did not bring any servants with him, so he asked Madame Hui for help with laundry, sewing, and even cooking, and she gave her more money. Young men and women, if they get along for a long time, they will develop feelings for each other. Years ago, Mr. Yan wanted to take Huanayang home, but his family would not allow it. In a fit of anger, he invited his familiar neighbors and colleagues to a banquet, which was regarded as a witness for them to become husband and wife. The days went on like this. Huanayang also found out that she was pregnant a few days ago. When the two young couples were happily preparing to welcome their new life, the Yan family sent someone to invite Mr. Yan to go back and get married. It is said that the 8 characters are combined and the betrothal gift has been given. It is time to wait for Mr. Yan to go back to greet the bride. Mr. Yan naively thought that Huanayang was pregnant and that as long as he knelt in front of his parents, he could make them change their minds. So he took Huanayang home with great fanfare. As a result, what awaited him was a severe beating, and Huanayang was pinned to the ground by the maid and mother-in-law and she was given abortion pills. Fortunately, Master Zhou and his wife arrived and helped to stop him, and then he took Huanayang and rushed out in the carriage with all his strength. At that time, he could only think of Broken Gold Beach. It was the only place where he made friends based on his own ability, and it was also the first place in the world where he gained recognition and a sense of accomplishment. "You kid is so courageous." The old lady searched for an adjective for a long time, and only found these 2 words. This matter, of course, the Yan family is wrong. Even biological parents should not impose their wishes on their children. Moreover, Mr. Yan is obviously different from those well-behaved children. He is talented and rebellious. He is a typical donkey who refuses to be led away and is a regressive type. The family should provide more guidance and encouragement, and wait until he gets older and has more experience, and the person will become mature and stable. But obviously, the Yan family does not have this patience, or is unwilling to pay this patience and love to their child. They just want to fix him into what the family needs and put him in a suitable position to shine for the family. Mr. Yan is also too naive. He knows that his parents regard him as a tool for exchanging family interests, but he still thinks that he can blackmail his parents and live according to his wishes. Now, his naive illusions have been shattered, and he can finally see the cruel truth of the matter. Old Mrs. Li's irritation made Mr. Yan shed tears. "Auntie, I thought they were my parents. More than anything else, my son is always the most important in their hearts. But no, they are not, they never care whether I like it or not. They have been forcing me to study and marry women I don't like. They only have family in their hearts. For the sake of the family, they never cared about how much hardship I suffered outside, so forget it, but now they can even kill their own grandchildren. I never thought it would be like this." He grabbed the old lady's hand and choked with tears. "Auntie, do you think I'm wrong? I just want to live according to my own wishes. I don't want to study hard, and I don't want to marry a woman I've never met before. Am I wrong?" The old lady felt distressed and patted his back gently, comforting him. "It's all over, and he will get better soon. Don't cry, you see Huanayang and the child have been saved, and you only have flesh wounds. It'll be alive and kicking in half a month, and we'll figure it out when the time comes. Li Lao Er and Li Lao Si also followed suit. Yes, you are familiar with the people in our village. Live in peace and take good care of yourself. Mr. Yan nodded, wiped his tears, and said, Auntie, I am penniless. I was living in your house just to eat and drink, but now I am here again with my wife and children. The old lady laughed when she heard this. You have built Broken Gold Beach so well, and our family and the villagers are grateful. Although we were paid wages, everyone was poor at that time and the wages were not much. Now you are a family of 3. If you come here for a short stay, just treat it like everyone is giving you extra wages, so live in peace and don't think too much. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 308. Chapter 308. Who asked me to marry a wolf? At this time, Tao Hongying brought in a large pottery bowl of dumplings stuffed with pork and cabbage, and said with a smile, Come, Mr. Yan, eat your fill first. There is also porridge and boiled eggs in the pot. When Madame Hui wakes up, we can make them at any time, all can be eaten. Mr. Yan was relieved, and after thanking him, he wolfed down the food. When everyone saw that the pottery bowl had reached the bottom, they were relieved. It was a good thing to be able to eat. Soon, everyone dispersed. That night, the old lady stayed with the couple in the east room, and she had someone to take care of them if anything happened. The good news came and ran to sleep with me under the covers. She was also curious about how her father and mother negotiated and whether he could go on the expedition. It's a pity that Li Laosi called his son home again, and then the father and son lay on the kong and rode a big horse. They made a couplets and lifted the daughter into a sedan chair. All the brothers were invited to play together. Jiyan was having a good time and slept soundly. Naturally, he didn't see his parents' hands holding each other's hands all night long. They held them with too much reluctance. The Yan family's carriage was hidden by Uncle Zhao and others. Mr. Yan and his wife did not go out. People in the village had long developed the good habit of being tight-lipped. Therefore, Mr. Yan and Huaniyang have been living in the village for 7 or 8 days, but no one has come here. Master Yan's wounds on his back have turned into scabs, and he can now walk under the eaves. Huaniyang can now sit up and take care of herself, eat, drink and defecate. She has a quiet and gentle temperament, is rare to be diligent, and her embroidery work is excellent. The old lady occasionally sews, and if I talk to her, she will help match the embroidery thread. If the old lady was busy doing something, she would pick it up and sew a few stitches and embroider a piece. The old lady and Tao Hongying would be full of praise when they saw it. She also sewed some small things by herself, which not only filled her spare time but also made her not tired. In just a few days, Jiyan got 2 beautiful purses and a small cloth bag for snacks, which made Jiyan smile. This afternoon, Mr. Ho, who had been in the city for many days, finally came back. Jiyan is riding on Daddy's neck, wandering around the yard and basking in the sun. This place in the south of the Yangtze River is very different from that in the north. At this time of year, people in Sibei can still freeze to death. They cannot leave the big kong every day and cannot leave the house. But here in Jiangnan, it is warm outside and cold inside. Sitting on the hot kong, my legs are covered with quilts. When Li Laosi heard the noise, he rushed out with his daughter on his back. Yashan was carrying things to the yard next door. Master Ho picked up 2 boxes and shook them at Jiyan. Fu Niu, I brought you something good. Jiyan clapped his hands happily and almost fell off his father's shoulders. Li Laosi quickly helped his daughter and asked in a low voice, Master Marquis, have you set a date for the expedition? The Marquis nodded and replied with a smile, it's decided, it will be the day after tomorrow, but if my aunt doesn't agree, I don't dare to take you with me. As soon as Mr. Ho reminded him, Li Laosi became bitter. In the past few days, My mother has been cold-faced and refused to pay attention to him. He was so anxious that he really couldn't guess what my mother was thinking. Suddenly, they entered the courtyard. The old lady heard the movement and came out to greet them. Mr. Yan also followed behind. The Marquis greeted him for a few words. At this moment, the village chief and Uncle Zhao knew that the Marquis was back, so they all gathered to chat. Hearing that he was going to go on an expedition the day after tomorrow, everyone was curious. Are you finally afraid of those scraps in the imperial court? The Marquis nodded and said with a rare joke, the barbarians attacked the dock twice. The second time they almost crossed the river. The old guys in the court were so frightened that they almost peed their pants. Ding Beiho also excused himself from illness and refused to go any further. Go and sit down at the dock. The emperor directly asked for the military power back and gave it to me. He asked me to take charge of an army of 50,000 people and to defend and counterattack with all my strength. We will go on an expedition the day after tomorrow. Come back today to see everyone, and I will go back to Kyoto tomorrow. Everyone clapped and applauded. Okay, that's it, those dumb people can talk big, and when something happens, they'll be scared to death. At the critical moment, it depends on the real ability of Mr. Ho. Mr. Li looked at my mother longingly and wanted to ask a few questions, but he didn't dare. The old lady didn't see her son like this, so she only hugged her granddaughter and talked. Tao Hongying, on the other hand, could not see her husband being wronged, so she softly helped and begged for mercy. Mother, please let the fourth child go on an expedition with the Marquis. If he stays at home, I'm afraid he won't have a smile on his face. Rather than doing this, it's better for him to do whatever he wants. The old lady sighed and pulled her daughter-in-law to sit down. You are just soft-hearted. The fourth brother is gone. I'm afraid you won't be able to eat well and sleep well, so you have to think about him day and night. Tao Hongying's eyes turned red. Mom, you can marry a chicken, a dog, but who told me to marry a wolf? You can trap him for a while, but you can't trap him forever. And he has been at home for so many years, and he has been very good. Now I have with a daughter by his side and a mother to love him, he can go wherever he wants to go. The old lady remained silent for a long time before asking the good news. Has Fu Niu been with Daddy these days? Did you let Daddy take advantage of your blessing? Yes, Ji Yan nodded heavily. Fu Niu has given Daddy a lot of blessings. Sure enough, the old lady smiled, kissed her granddaughter, and then said, Sir, get ready and go on an expedition with the Marquis. But remember, you are not allowed to be reckless at any time outside. You must listen to the Marquis and come back safely. Mother, Li Laozi was so excited that he knelt down and kowtowed to his mother. Thank you, Mother, I will definitely not get into trouble and come back safely. Old Mrs. Li waved her hands helplessly. At this moment, she was extremely glad that she had asked Ji Yi to accompany her boss to the south early, otherwise she would definitely have made trouble this time and followed the Marquis to the battlefield together. The Marquis then ordered Yeshan, bring the box over. Yeshan left in response and quickly brought a long box over. Ji Yan quickly jumped off her grandma's lap and ran to the Marquis' side. The Marquis hugged her and looked at each other, tacitly saying, I found some good materials and made some weapons for the fourth child. Mr. Ho pointed to the box and said, Fourth, take a look. Is it suitable for use? Li Laozi rubbed his hands excitedly and quickly opened the box. There was a saber over 2 feet long placed in the box. It was completely black and only the blade was bright. The handle of the knife was wrapped with a special leather belt to absorb sweat and prevent it from slipping. Li Laozi shook it in his hand. It was very heavy. Ordinary people might find it burdensome, but it was just right for him. He waved it twice, and the length was just right. The entire knife has no gorgeous patterns, but it is intimidating. It looks like a sharp weapon for harvesting human heads. Good knife, Li Laozi smiled so much that his lips reached to his ears. The Marquis also nodded. Materials are rare, otherwise I would have equipped the whole army with them, but it's a pity that I only have this one. For the remaining scraps, I asked the craftsman to make you 2 daggers, 20 arrows, and more. Ku bought you a longbow, equip it and practice diligently whenever you have time. Thank you, Mr. Ho. Li Laozi hurriedly rummaged through the box again. He was more comfortable with a bow and arrow than with a saber. Now that he has a good bow and sharp arrows, he is even more powerful than a tiger. But no man can resist the temptation of a good weapon. The village chief, Uncle Zhao, and others also came forward, touched the saber and pointed the arrowhead, and they liked it very much. The Marquis took advantage of this moment to open the 2 small boxes and secretly whispered to Jiyan, "There are a lot of good things in the inner treasury. My adoptive father also got some jewelry for you. If you can't take it with you for the time being, just leave it there until you grow up, wear it again." Jiyan beamed with joy, kissed her adoptive father and ran away quickly, finding a place where no one was around to send the box into space. Her little treasury has grown again. Of course, the old lady and Tao Hongying saw the little guy's little moves, but they just didn't want to expose it. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law talked in low voices, thinking about packing the 4th child's luggage. If there is anything that the Marquis can use, he should prepare an extra portion. At this time, Mr. Yan, who had been silently listening to the excitement, suddenly stood up and knelt down in front of the Marquis. Today's 3rd update is here. I wish you all a happy Children's Day. Then, Huawei will continue to push for updates on ticket sales. The praises, 5 stars or good, are coming. Wow, the recent reviews and reminders are much less, baby. Guys, don't fatten up Huawei. Huawei is really diligent in updating. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 309. Chapter 309, There is no turning back when the bow is fired. Everyone was startled and didn't understand what was wrong with him. Just when they were about to ask, Mr. Yan shed tears. "Master Marquis, please accept me. I also want to serve as a soldier and kill the enemy and make meritorious deeds." The Marquis frowned and stretched out his hand to help him up. "There's no need to kneel down. Sit down and speak slowly." But Mr. Yan refused. "Master Marquis, I am not joking. I have thought about it and asked the Marquis to allow me to follow you, go into battle to kill the enemy, and make contributions. I originally thought that I was very talented, and I would have a bright future in the future. So I am so proud and arrogant. But now, I am penniless and cannot even protect my wife and children. I just realized that I am worthless and not a man at all. The reason our family never takes what I say seriously or takes my resistance seriously is because I am nothing without the support and shelter of my family. My wife, children, and even me can be discarded and treated casually by my family. I want to stand up. I want to support my wife and children by myself. But apart from building a house, I can't do anything else. I am completely useless. Therefore, I want to go into battle to kill the enemy. This is the fastest opportunity to make achievements." Mr. Yan knocked his head to the ground. It was so hard that his forehead turned red. The Marquis thought for a moment, then used both hands to help him up, and asked, "Have you asked your wife if you want to join the army? After all, you are not alone now, you are a father and a husband. On the battlefield, there is no sword. If something happens to you, have you thought about what they will do in the future?" Mr. Yan was stunned for a moment, looking a little confused, obviously not thinking so carefully. The Marquis added, "Of course I am very happy. The men of Tianwu all take it as their own duty to regain the mountains and rivers. They are willing to take up swords and guns to protect their families and the country. But I don't want you to make an impulsive decision and regret it when you get to the battlefield. Sometimes, maybe it's not you who is killed, but more good men. No, I won't. Mr. Yan wanted to retort, but the Marquis waved his hand. We will go on the expedition the day after tomorrow. You still have 1 day to think about it. If you decide, we will go out together. But again, I did not look back. See, the battlefield is not a child's play. If you run away from the battlefield, I may behead you with my own hands to enforce military law. After saying that, he nodded with everyone and embraced the good news. Come on, Fu Niuer, let's play with my foster father for a while. We can't favor one over the other, but we also want to share some of the blessings from my foster father. Ji Yin smiled and hugged his adoptive father's neck. I will give all the remaining blessings to my adoptive father. My adoptive father and father will definitely kill the barbarians to their death. Okay, well said, the victory is ready and the success is imminent. Everyone laughed when they heard this, and watched them go out. Tao Hongying also took Li Laozi back to pack his luggage, and gave a few more instructions along the way. Old Mrs. Li helped Mr. Yan back to the east room, and on the pretext of picking vegetables, she gave the place to the young couple to discuss it carefully. I don't know how Mr. Yan persuaded Hui Niang. The next day, he asked the old lady to help him prepare a piece of luggage so that he could go on the expedition together. The old lady couldn't help but sigh, and she wanted to persuade him to stay. After all, he had good intentions. What would happen to Madame Hui and her son in the future? Even if the Yan family knew about it, they might take it out on the Li family and Su Jintan. Although they were not the ones who instigated it, Mr. Yan went to war from the Li family after all. Even though the Yan family now dislikes the son in every possible way, if something really happened, everyone in the Yan family will turn regret and guilt into anger. They must find someone to hate, and they will feel better. Human nature is selfish and there is no reason at all. Fortunately, although Mr. Yan was naive and impulsive, he was not stupid. He changed his disguise, went back to the city, and sent a letter to his sister, brother-in-law, and the Yan family. The letter stated that Hu Niang and her child were both dead. He was disheartened, left home, and traveled all over the world. The hatred of losing his wife and son should offset the kindness of the Yan family in bringing him up. His ashes will return to ashes, dust will return to dust, and there will be no more people like him in the world. By the time the Yan family received the letter, Mr. Yan had already changed his name to Li Yong and followed Mr. Marquis to the dock. Li Laozi was righteous and gave the specially made saber to Mr. Yan. No, Mr. Yan is now his cousin Li Yong. Li Yong knew the origin of the saber very well. His eyes were red at that time and he didn't know what to say. But Li Laozi patted him on the shoulder boldly. If it's for you, just take it. I'm good at archery. I only need a good bow and arrows. Besides, I also have 2 daggers, which are enough. But you have no one. Scholars who have the strength to bind chickens must practice their swords well now, otherwise they will not be able to withstand any barbarian they encounter. Li Yong nodded heavily. He really put his heart into it, and from now on he held the saber in his arms all the time. Except for eating and sleeping, he spent all his free time practicing the sword. Even though his arms were so tired and swollen that he couldn't lift them, he didn't stop. Originally, Zhang Chang, the commander of the Marquis bodyguards, obeyed the order and arranged Li Laozi and Li Yong under his command. He really had a headache for a while. Li Laozi is of course invincible. He has seen it with his own eyes. It would be better to have 100 such masters. But for someone like Li Yong, it was very difficult to take a few steps without having to breathe. When you go to the battlefield, not only to kill the enemy, but also to protect him, you must arrange a few good hands. Fortunately, Li Yong was harder than he expected, so he was willing to pay more, and in the end he was really impressed. Of course, this is all for later. The Li family in Broken Gold Beach saw off their fourth son Li, and the whole family, young and old, was in a low mood for several days. It was Li Laosan who heard that his younger brother had gone to join the army, so he came back from Luoan to inquire about it. When he knew it was true, he had tears in his eyes when he left. Although he also knew that this younger brother had an irresistible temper, and that he was invincible and might not be in danger, but the battlefield was changing rapidly, and who could guarantee it? Jiyan didn't know that her father had given away the saber she used to scrape the ground for materials, and he was still thinking about what to plant in the few acres of land behind the space courtyard this year. Vegetables must be grown, and chickens, ducks, geese, and rabbits must be eaten. The two piggy couples and the first batch of piglets have grown up, and each of them is a loser, and she can no longer afford to feed them. Just leave a couple of pigs to have children, and the rest have to go out. Counting the days, the uncle and the third brother are about to arrive in Quanzhou. As expected, they will definitely be back in 1 month. At that time, she can use her hands and feet to get some rapeseed out of the small yard. For example, lettuce, rapeseed, tomatoes, etc., and the most important, peppers. Perhaps, she can eat boiled fish, twice-cooked pork, and barbecue without waiting until autumn. Just thinking about it made her mouth water. Mrs. Li was thinking about her son and absent-mindedly picking up beans. Occasionally she turned around and saw her granddaughter drooling. She couldn't help but feel angry and funny. "Little girl, what are you craving for again? Your mother has been a little busy recently, so I'll make it for you when she comes back." Huanyan could already walk around in the fields. She sat aside to help and asked, "Auntie, is the valley so busy every day?" End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 310. Chapter 310. This child has a really hard life. The old lady shook her head. That's not true. There are so many people these days, and I don't know what's going on. And there are people who come here specifically to eat. It's really troublesome for your fourth sister-in-law to make the daily order. But that's okay, your fourth sister-in-law. When I get busy, I don't miss the fourth child so much. I come back and put my pillow on my face every night and fall asleep." Hui Niang smiled tenderly and replied, "It's great that fourth sister-in-law is like this. She has skills and can support herself." The old lady was afraid that she would feel sorry for herself, so she said, "You also have skills, and your embroidery work is very good. When you take good care of yourself in the future, I will accompany you to find an embroidery shop in the city. It doesn't matter whether you make some money with some embroidery work or not. It will save you the trouble of thinking all day long." This is what Huanyan had in mind. When the old lady said it, she shook her hand and thanked her. "Thank you, Aunt, for planning so much for me." The old lady patted her hand and said with a smile, "Don't think so well of my aunt, I also have selfish motives." "Mr. Yan, no, I heard Li Yong say, are you from a noble family? I thought, wait until you are healthy. Okay, we can teach Fu Niu how to read and write, embroidery or other etiquette rules. In short, it doesn't matter to our family to help me take care of this child, but this girl has a foster father like the Marquis, so we can't let her. It's a joke." "Don't worry, Auntie, this is easy. I will definitely teach Niu everything I know." Huanyan agreed immediately. She was extremely grateful to the Li family for taking her in, and she even liked Fu Niu's cuteness and intelligence. Taking a step back, she now relies on the Li family to make a living and can be a female teacher for Fu Niu, which gives her a little more confidence. At this point, Mrs. Li asked a few more questions. "Mother Hui, you were at the mine to take care of your father. Now that you are here, what will your father do?" And do you want to take care of your mother's family? Send a message. Hui Niang smiled bitterly, Auntie, my father is not in good health. Even if I follow him to take care of food and clothing, he will never be as easy as before. Last winter, when it was cold, my father's condition worsened and he gradually became ill. I had just made up my mind with my husband at that time. My husband had been helping to find doctors for diagnosis and treatment, but he always said that we should prepare for the funeral. Only then did my husband propose to me in front of my father, and my father agreed. A few days after we got married, he passed away. The old lady was stunned when she heard this. She originally thought that Huanayang and his wife were giving and receiving privately. From this point of view, it was justified. After all, they had the permission of Huanayang's father and did not break the rules. He was also fascinated by the good news. He lay on grandma's lap, grabbed a handful of beans and played with them. Huanayang saw the old lady's expression in her eyes and sighed softly. As for my mother's family, as soon as my father's accident happened, my mother took her two younger brothers back to her grandfather's house. She never sent anyone to see her, nor gave her a penny. I didn't want to contact him anymore. The old lady nodded. Your mother is indeed too ruthless and unjust. Even if you are angry that your father made a mistake and brought trouble to the whole family, you are always her biological daughter, right? Why aren't you worried about whether you will be bullied in the mine? Huanayang hesitated for a moment and then added, my biological mother was my father's first wife, and my current mother is a second wife. No wonder, the old lady grinned, becoming more and more sympathetic, you are a child who has a really hard life. Huanayang's eyes were red, but she still smiled and said, Auntie, I'm not bitter. On the contrary, I feel that my life is very good and I married a good husband. Although he acts impulsively and sometimes acts like a child, he treats me with sincerity. I have to wait for him to come back. Hey, that's right, you're such a smart girl, and my aunt likes it, so that's how it should be. At any time, we have to look for the better. Seeing that the old lady was happy, Huanayang mentioned one more thing, Auntie, are there any old ladies who are widowed or living alone in the village? I want to move out. Auntie has many children at home, and she is already very tired on weekdays. I am here to help. My aunt and sister-in-law have added more work, which makes me feel bad. Old Mrs. Lee didn't react, she still wanted to keep someone. Just then, Li Lauer came in from outside and said loudly in the main room, Mom, the valley is very busy. The fourth brother and sister said they can't come back, so I asked my mother to cook at noon to deal with it. Hey, I got it, old Mrs. Lee responded, and Mr. Lee immediately turned around and left. Old Mrs. Lee looked at her son's back through the crack of the window and suddenly understood. Huanayang is trying to avoid suspicion. Thinking about it carefully, the second brother's wife just died, and the eldest brother should be back in 2 or 3 months. Huanayang lives here, and it is really inconvenient to come in and out. It means that everyone in the village is familiar with him and no one gossips about him, which is not good after all. Auntie understands, Madam Hui, don't worry, I will think of a good place for you in the next few days. Take good care of yourself and don't think too much. Okay, Auntie. Madam Hui felt at ease and smiled more gently. Jiyan liked this master very much, so she thought about it while resting her head on her grandma's thigh. Actually, Mrs. Kui's house next door has many rooms, so it's best to borrow one. But Mrs. Kui is not around on weekdays, and Huanayang is pregnant. If something happens to her, she is always worried because no one is around. It's even worse with my adoptive father, who attracts more gossips than at home. Thinking about it over and over, she really thought of a good place to go, and that was the village chief's grandpa's house. There are 3 rooms in the village chief's house. The old couple live in one end of the house, and one is still vacant. Hui Niang lived there and kept company with the old couple on weekdays. Even the miracle Dr. Zhang lived in the next courtyard just a wall away. It felt so safe. While Hui Niang went to get some water, she hurriedly whispered into Grandma's ear. The old lady's eyes lit up when she heard this. She nodded her granddaughter's forehead and said, "You've really grown up in your mind." After dinner in the evening, the old lady went out for a walk and went to the village chief's house. She chatted with the village elder's companion for a few words. When she came back, her face was beaming with joy. Jiyan knew it was done when he saw it, so he went to the west room with his brothers to play with peace of mind. School has started, and the brats have been having fun during the Chinese New Year for almost a month. As a result, most of the quizzes were burnt on the first day. So now, sitting at the Kong table, writing Chinese characters and reciting texts, everyone has a bitter face, scratching their ears and cheeks, like a tethered monkey. Jiyan picked up a piece of fruit and gnawed it, looking at it here and making trouble there, which made her brothers scream even more. In the end, it was Tao Hongying who heard the commotion and came over, rescued her son and nephews, picked up her daughter, and slapped her angrily. "What are you being naughty about, disturbing your brother's studies?" Jiyan grinned, hugged her mother's neck, winked and made faces with her brothers. She was so angry that the boys wanted to make faces in return. As a result, the pen in her hand accidentally made a big mark and she had to write a new article. Tao Hongying carried her daughter into the east room. Madame Hui took embroidery thread, teased Jiyan, and taught her how to tie her hair. Tao Hongying tore open a piece of soft cotton cloth and helped the old lady to cut out several sets of small clothes for the baby in Hui Niang's belly. I estimate that the child was born around September. It was a little cold at that time, so I made clothes made of fine cotton, which was suitable for wearing indoors. While she was busy, she complained to her mother-in-law, "Mom, that side of the valley is starting to look more and more like a tavern. I see that the recent guests are just here to eat, not to soak in the hot springs." End of this chapter.